Now it happened after the death of Saul, when David had returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites, that he stayed 2 days in Ziklag. On the third day a man came unexpectedly from Saul's camp, with his clothes torn and dust on his head, as in mourning. When he came to David, he bowed to the ground and lay himself face down in an act of great respect and submission. Then David asked him, "Where do you come from?" He said, "I have escaped from the camp of Israel." David said to him, "How did it go? Please tell me." He answered, "The people have fled from the battle. Also many of the people have fallen and are dead. Saul and Jonathan his son are also dead." So David said to the young man who informed him, "How do you know Saul and his son Jonathan are dead?" And the young man who told him explained, "By chance I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and there was Saul leaning on his spear, and the chariots and horsemen of the Philistines were close behind him. When he turned to look behind him, he saw me and called to me. I answered, 'Here I am.' He asked me, 'Who are you?' I answered, 'I am an Amalekite.' He said to me, 'Stand up facing me and kill me, for terrible agony has come over me. Yet I still live, and I will be taken alive.' So I stood facing him and killed him, because I knew that he could not live after he had fallen. Then I took the crown which was on his head and the band which was on his arm, and I have brought them here to my lord." Then David grasped his own clothes and tore them in mourning. So did all the men who were with him. They mourned and wept and fasted until evening for Saul and Jonathan his son, and for the Lord's people and the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword in battle. David said to the young man who informed him, "Where are you from?" He answered, "I am a son of a foreigner, resident alien sojourner, and Amalekite." David said to him, "How is it that you were not afraid to put out your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" David called one of the young men and said, "Go, execute him." So he struck the Amalekite, and he died. David said to the fallen man, "Your blood is on your own head, for your own mouth has testified against you, saying, 'I have killed the Lord's anointed.'" Then David sang this dirge funeral song over Saul and his son Jonathan, and he told them to teach the sons of Judah the song of the bow. "Behold, it is written in the book of Jasher, 'Your glory and splendor, O Israel, is slain upon your high places. How the mighty have fallen.' Tell it not in Gath, proclaim it not in the streets of Ashkelon, or the daughters of the Philistines will rejoice. The daughters of the uncircumcised pagans will exult. O mountains of Gilboa, let not dew or rain be upon you, nor fields with offerings, for there the shield of the mighty was defiled. The shield of Saul, dry, cracked, not anointed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan did not turn back, and the sword of Saul did not return empty. Saul and Jonathan, beloved and lovely and friends in their lives, and in their death they were not separated. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. O daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothed you luxuriantly in scarlet, who put ornaments of gold on your apparel. How the mighty have fallen in the midst of the battle. Jonathan lies slain upon your high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. You have been a good friend to me. Your love toward me was more wonderful than the love of a woman. How the mighty have fallen, and the weapons of war have perished." So it happened after this that David inquired of the Lord, saying, "Shall I go up into one of the cities of Judah?" And the Lord said to him, "Go up." David asked, "Where shall I go?" And he said, "To Hebron." So David went up there to Hebron with his 2 wives, also Ahinoam and Jezreel, and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel in Judah. And David brought up his men who were with him, each one with his household, and they lived in the cities of Hebron. Then the men of Judah came, and there they anointed David king over the house of Judah. Then they told David, "It was the men of Jabesh Gilead who buried Saul." So David sent messengers to the men of Jabesh Gilead, and said to them, "May you be blessed by the Lord, because you showed him this graciousness and loyalty to Saul your lord king, and buried him. Now may the Lord show loving kindness and truth and faithfulness to you, who will show this goodness to you, because you have done this thing. So now let your hands be strong and be valiant, for your lord Saul is dead, and also the house of Judah has anointed me king over them." Now Saul's cousin Abner, the son of Ner, commander of Saul's army, had taken Ish-bosheth, the son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim. He made him king over Gilead, over the Asherites, over Jezreel, over Ephraim, over Benjamin, and over all Israel except Judah. Ish-bosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he became king over Israel, and he reigned for 2 years. But the house of Judah followed David. And the time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months. Now Abner the son of Ner and the servants of Ish-bosheth the son of Saul went out from Mahanaim to Gibeon. Joab, David's nephew, the son of Zeruiah, and the servants of David also went out and met them by the pool of Gibeon. They sat down with one group on one side of the pool and the other group on the other side of the pool. Then Abner said to Joab, "Let the young men now stand and have a contest before us." And Joab said, "Let them stand." So they stood up and went over by number, 12 for Benjamin and Ish-bosheth the son of Saul, and 12 of the servants of David. Each one of them seized his opponent by the head and thrust his sword into his opponent's side. So they fell down together. Therefore that place was called Elkath Hazarim, that is, Field of Sides, which is in Gibeon. There was a very fierce battle that day, and Abner and the men of Israel were beaten before the servants of David. 3 sons of Zeruiah, the half-sister of David, were there, Joab, Hushai, and Asahel. Now Asahel was as light and swift-footed as one of the wild gazelles in the field. Asahel pursued Abner and did not turn to the right or to the left as he followed him. Then Abner looked behind him and said, "Is that you, Asahel?" He answered, "It is I." So Abner said to him, "Turn to your right or to your left and grab one of the young men and take his armor for yourself." But Asahel was not willing to turn away from pursuing Abner. Abner repeated again, "Turn away from following me. Why should I have to strike you to the ground? How would I be able to face Joab your brother and look him in the eye?" But Asahel refused to turn away, so Abner struck him in the abdomen with the butt end of a spear, and the spear came out his back, and he fell there and died on that spot. And it came about that everyone who came to the place where Asahel fell and died stood there and reflected it. But Joab and Abishai, Asahel's brothers, pursued Abner. When the sun was going down, they came to the hill of Ammon, which is in front of Giah, on the way to the wilderness of Gibeon. And the sons of the tribe of Benjamin gathered together behind Abner, and became one troop, and took their stand on the top of the hill. Then Abner called to Joab, "Must the sword devour forever? Do you not know that it will be bitter in the end? How long will it be before you tell the people to stop pursuing their brothers?" Joab said, "As God lives, if you had not spoken, then the people certainly would have stopped pursuing their brothers in the morning." So Joab blew the trumpet, and all the people halted, and no longer pursued Israel, nor did they fight anyone any more. Then Abner and his men went through the Arabah desert region all that night, crossed the Jordan, went through Bithron, and walked the whole morning, and came to Mahanaim, where Ish-bosheth ruled Israel. Joab returned from pursuing Abner, and when he had gathered all the people together, 19 of David's servants were missing, besides Asahel. But the servants of David had struck down many of Benjamin and Abner's men, so that 360 men died. And they picked up the body of Asahel and buried him in the tomb of his father in Bethlehem. Then Joab and his men walked all night, and they arrived in Hebron at daybreak. There was a long war between the house of Saul and the house of David, but David grew steadily stronger, while the house of Saul grew weaker and weaker to the point of being powerless. Sons were born to David in Hebron. His firstborn was Amnon, by Ahinoam of Jezreel; his second Chileab, by Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel; the third Absalom, the son of his wife Maacah, daughter of Talmi, the king of Geshur; the fourth Adonijah, the son of his wife Haggith; the fifth Shephatiah, the son of his wife Abital; and the sixth Ithream, by David's wife Eglah. These sons were born to David in Hebron. Now while war continued between the houses of Saul and David, Abner was proving himself strong in the house of Saul. Now Saul had a concubine whose name was Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah. And Ish-bosheth said to Abner, "Why have you gone into my father's concubine?" Then Abner was very angry at the words of Ish-bosheth, and he said, "Am I a dog's head, a despicable traitor that belongs to Judah? Today I show loyalty and kindness to the house of Saul your father, to his brothers and his friends, by not having you handed over to David. And yet you charge me today with guilt concerning this woman. May God do so to Abner, and more also, if I do not do for David just as the Lord has sworn to him, to transfer the kingdom from the house of Saul and establish the throne of David over Israel and Judah from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south." And Ish-bosheth could not say another word to Abner, because he was afraid of him. Then Abner sent messengers to David, who was in his place at Hebron, saying, "Whose is the land? Make your covenant treaty with me, and behold, my hand shall be with you to bring all Israel over to you." David said, "Good, I will make a covenant treaty with you, but I require one thing of you. You shall not see my face unless you first bring Michal, Saul's daughter, when you come to see me. So David sent messengers to Ish-bosheth, Saul's son, saying, Give me my wife Michal, to whom I was betrothed for the price of 100 foreskins for the Philistines. Ish-bosheth sent and took her from her husband and Paltiel, the son of Laish, to whom Saul had given her. But her husband went with her weeping continually behind her as far as Bahurim. And Abner told him, Go, return. And he did so. Abner talked with the elders, tribal leaders of Israel, saying, In times past you were seeking for David to be king over you. Now then, do it and make him king. For the Lord has spoken of David, saying, By the hand of my servant David I will save my people Israel from the hand of the Philistines and the hand of all their enemies. Abner also spoke to the men of Benjamin. Then he also went to tell David at Hebron everything that seemed good to Israel and to the entire house of Benjamin. So Abner came to David at Hebron and brought 20 men along with him. And David prepared a feast for Abner and the men with him. Abner said to David, Let me stand up and go, and gather all Israel to the Lord the king, so that they may make a covenant treaty with you, so that you may reign over all that your soul desires. So David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. Then the servants of David came from Joab from a raid, and brought a great quantity of spoil with them. But Abner was not with David at Hebron, because David had sent him away, and he had gone in peace. When Joab and all the army that was with him arrived, they told Joab, Abner the son of Ner came to the king, and he has sent him away, and he has gone in peace. Then Joab came to the king and said, What have you done? Behold, Abner came to you. Why did you send him away, so that he is already gone? You know Abner the son of Ner, that he only came to deceive you with flattering words, and to learn of your going out and coming in, and to find out what you are doing. When Joab left David, he sent messengers after Abner, and they brought him back from the well of Sirah. But David knew nothing about Joab's action. So when Abner returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside to the middle of the gate to speak to him privately. And there he struck Abner in the abdomen so that he died, to avenge the blood of Asahel, Joab's brother. Afterward, when David heard of it, he said, I and my kingdom are forever innocent before the Lord of the blood of Abner the son of Ner. Let the guilt fall on the head of Joab and all his father's house family, and may there never disappear from the house of Joab one who suffers with a discharge, or one who is a leper, or one who walks with a crutch, being unfit for war, or one who falls by the sword, or one who lacks food. So Joab and Abishai, his brother, murdered Abner because he had killed their brother Asahel in the battle of Gibeon. Then David said to Joab and to all the people with him, Tear your clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourn before Abner. And King David walked behind the bier. They buried Abner in Hebron, and the king raised his voice and wept at the grave of Abner, and all the people wept. And the king sang a dirge funeral song over Abner, and said, Should Abner the great warrior die as a fool dies? Your hands were not bound, nor your feet put in fetters. As a man falls before the wicked, so you have fallen. And all the people wept again over him. All the people came to urge David to eat food while it was still day. But David took an oath, saying, May God do so to me, and more also, if I taste bread or anything else before the sun sets. And all the people took notice of it, and it pleased them, just as everything that the king did pleases all the people. So all the people and all Israel understood that day that it had not been the will of the king to put Abner the son of Ner to death. Then the king said to his servants, Do you not know that a prince and a great man has fallen this day in Israel? Today I am weak. Though anointed king, these men, the sons of Zeruiah, are too difficult for me. May the Lord repay the evildoer Joab in accordance with his wickedness. When Saul's son Ish-bosheth, king of Israel, heard that Abner had died in Hebron, he lost courage, and all Israel was horrified. Saul's son had 2 men who were commanders of raiding bands of soldiers. One was named Benah, and the other Rechab, the sons of Rimmon, the Beerothite, of the sons tribe of Benjamin, for Beeroth is also considered part of the tribe of Benjamin, and the Beerothites fled to Gittim, and have been resident aliens there to this day. Jonathan, Saul's son, whose feet were crippled. He was 5 years old when the news of the deaths of Saul and Jonathan came from Israel. And the boy's nurse picked him up and fled, but it happened that while she was hurrying to flee, he fell and became lame. His name was Mephibosheth. So the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, Rechab and Benah, left and came to the house of Ish-bosheth in the heat of the day, while he was taking his midday rest. They came into the interior of the house as if to get wheat for the soldiers, and they struck him in the stomach. Then Rechab and Benah, his brother, escaped unnoticed. Now when they entered the house, he was lying on his bed in his bedroom. They not only struck him and killed him, but they also beheaded him. Then they took his head and traveled all night by way of the Arabah. They brought the head of Ish-bosheth to David at Hebron, and said to the king, "Look, the head of Ish-bosheth the son of Saul, your enemy, who sought your life. Thus the Lord has granted my lord the king vengeance this day on Saul and on his descendants." David replied to Rekah and Baanah his brother, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, and said to them, "As the Lord lives, who has redeemed my life from everyday adversity, when a man told me, 'Behold, Saul is dead,' thinking that he was bringing good news, I seized and killed him in Ziklag to reward him for his news. How much more when the wicked men have killed a righteous and just man in his own house on his bed? Shall I not require his blood from your hand and remove you from the earth?" So David commanded his young men, and they killed them and cut off their hands and feet and hung them beside the pool in Hebron. But they took Ish-bosheth's head and buried it in Hebron in the tomb of Abner his relative. Then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, "Behold, we are your bone and your flesh. In times past, when Saul was king over us, it was you who led Israel out to war and brought Israel in from battle. And the Lord told you, 'You shall shepherd my people Israel and be ruler over them.'" So all the elders, tribal leaders of Israel, came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant that with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed him king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned 40 years. In Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem he reigned 33 years over all Israel and Judah. Now the king and his men went to Jerusalem against the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, who said to David, "You shall not enter here, for the blind and the lame, even the weakest among us, will turn you away." They thought, "David cannot come in here, because the walls are impenetrable." Nevertheless, David captured the stronghold fortress of Zion, that is the city of David. Then David said on that day, "Whoever strikes the Jebusites, let him go up through the underground water shaft to strike the lame and the blind, who are destroyed by David's soul, because of their arrogance. For that reason they say, 'The blind or the lame Jebusites shall not come into the royal house of Israel.'" So David lived in the stronghold and called it the city of David, and he built all around the surrounding area from the Millo fortification and inward. David became greater and greater, for the Lord, the God of hosts armies, was with him. Now Hiram the king of Tyre sent messengers to David with cedar trees, carpenters, and stonemasons, and they built a palace for David. And David knew that the Lord had established him as king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for his people Israel's sake. David took more concubines and wives from Jerusalem, and he came from Hebron, and more sons and daughters were born to him. And these are the names of those who were born to him in Jerusalem: Shemaiah, Shobab, Nathan, Solomon, Ibhar, Elishua, Nepeg, Japhia, Elishama, Eliad, and Eliphalet. When the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over Israel, all the Philistines went up to look for him, but he heard about it and went down to the stronghold. Now the Philistines had come and spread out for battle in the valley of Reproves. David inquired of the Lord, saying, "Shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you hand them over to me?" And the Lord said to David, "Go up, for I will certainly hand them over to you." So David came to Baal Perazim, and he defeated them there, and said, "The Lord has broken through my enemies before me like a breakthrough of water." So he named that place Baal Perazim, Master of Breakthroughs. The Philistines abandoned their pagan idols there, so David and his men took them away to be burned. The Philistines came up once again and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. When David inquired of the Lord, he said, "You shall not go up, but circle around behind them and come at them in front of the balsam trees. And when you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the balsam trees, then you shall pay attention and act promptly, for at that time the Lord will have gone out before you to strike the army of the Philistines." David did just as the Lord had commanded him, and struck down the Philistines from Geba as far as Gezer. Again David gathered together all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose and went with all those who were with him to Baal Judah, Kiriath-jearim, to bring up from there to Jerusalem the ark of God, which is called by the very name of the Lord of hosts, who dwells enthroned above the cherubim. They placed the ark of God on a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. And Uzzah and Ahio, sons of Abinadab, were leading the new cart. So they brought it with the ark of God from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. and Ahio was walking in front of the ark. Meanwhile, David and all the house of Israel were celebrating and dancing before the Lord with all kinds of instruments made of fir or cypress wood, with lyres, harps, tambourines, castanets, and cymbals. When they came to Nachon's threshing floor, Uzzah reached out with his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it because the oxen stumbled and nearly overturned it. And the anger of the Lord burned against Uzzah, and God struck him there for his irreverence, and he died there by the ark of the God. David became angry and grieved and offended because of the Lord's outburst against Uzzah, and that place has been called Perez Uzzah, outburst against Uzzah, to this day. So David was afraid of the Lord that day, and he said, "How can the ark of the Lord come to me?" David was unwilling to move the ark of the Lord into the city of David with him. Instead, he took it aside to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. So the ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite for 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household family. Now King David was told, "The Lord has blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all that belongs to him because of the ark of God." So David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom into the city of David with rejoicing and gladness. And when those who were carrying the ark of the Lord by its poles had gone 6 paces, he sacrificed an ox and a fatling. And David was dancing before the Lord with great enthusiasm, and David was wearing a linen ephod, a priest's upper garment. So David and all the house of Israel were bringing the ark of the Lord up to the city of David with shouts of joy and with the sound of the trumpet. Then, as the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal, Saul's daughter, David's wife, looked down from the window above and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord. And she felt contempt for him in her heart because she thought him undignified. They brought the ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the tent which David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. When David had finished offering the burnt offerings and peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of host armies, and distributed to all the people, the entire multitude of Israel, both to women and men, to each a ring-shaped loaf of bread, a cake of dates, and a cake of raisins. Then all the people departed, each to his house. Then David returned to bless his household, but his wife Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, "How glorious and distinguished was the king of Israel today, who uncovered himself and stripped off his kingly robes in the eyes of his servants, maids like one of the ridraff who shamelessly uncovers himself." So David said to Michal, "It was before the Lord that I did this, who chose me above your father and all his house to appoint me as ruler over Israel, the people of the Lord. Therefore I will celebrate in pure enjoyment before the Lord. Yet I will demean myself even more than this, and will be humbled, abased in my own sight and yours as I please. But by the minds of whom you mention, by them I shall be held in honor." Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child to the day of her death. When King David lived in his palace, and the Lord had given him rest from all his surrounding enemies, the king said to Nathan the prophet, "See now, I dwell in a house of cedar, but the ark of God dwells with tent curtains." And Nathan said to the king, "Go, do everything that is in your heart, for the Lord is with you." But it happened that night that the word of the Lord came to Nathan, saying, "Go and tell my servant David, Thus says the Lord, should you be the one to build me a house in which to dwell? For I have not dwelt in a house since the day I brought the sons descendants of Israel up from Egypt, even to this day. But I have been moving about in a tent, even in a tabernacle. Wherever I have gone with all the Israelites, did I speak a word to any from the tribes of Israel, whom I commanded to shepherd my people Israel, asking, Why have you not built me a house of cedar? Say this to my servant David, Thus says the Lord of hosts, I took you from the pasture and from following the sheep, to be ruler over my people Israel. I have been with you wherever you have gone, and have cut off all your enemies from before you, and I will make you a great name like that of the great men of the earth. I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them so that they may live in a place of their own, and not be disturbed again. The wicked will not afflict them again as formerly, even from the day that I appointed judges over my people Israel, and I will give you rest from all your enemies. The Lord also declared to you that he will make a house royal dynasty for you. When your days are fulfilled and you lie down in death with your father's ancestors, I will raise up your descendants after you, who shall be born to you, and I will establish his kingdom. He is the one who shall build a house for my name and my presence, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. And I will be his father, and he shall be my son. When he commits iniquity, wrongdoing, I will discipline him with the rod of men and with the strokes of the sons of man. but my loving kindness and mercy will not depart from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I removed from before you. Your house, royal dynasty, and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever." Nathan spoke to David in accordance with all these words and all this vision. Then King David went in and sat in prayer before the Lord and said, "Who am I, O Lord God, and what is my house family that you have brought me this far? Yet this was very insignificant in your eyes, O Lord God, for you have spoken also of your servant's house, royal dynasty, in the distant future. And this is the law and custom of man, O Lord God. What more can David say to you? For you know, acknowledge, choose your servant, O Lord God. Because of your word, promise, and in accordance with your own heart, you have done all these great and astounding things to let your servant know, understand. Therefore you are great, O Lord God, for there is none like you, and there is no God beside you, according to all that we have heard with our ears. What one nation on earth is like your people Israel, whom God sent to redeem for himself as a people and to make a name for himself, and to do great and awesome things for yourself and for your land, before your people whom you have redeemed from it yourself, Egypt, from nations and their gods. You established for yourself your people Israel as your people forever, and you, O Lord, have become their God. Now, O Lord God, confirm forever the word of the covenant that you have spoken in regard to your servant and his house royal dynasty, and do just as you have spoken, so that your name may be magnified forever, saying, The Lord of hosts armies is God over Israel. And may the house royal dynasty of your servant David be established before you. For you, O Lord of hosts, God of Israel, have revealed this to your servant, saying, I will build you a house royal dynasty. For that reason your servant has found courage to pray this prayer to you. And now, O Lord God, you are God, and your words are truth, and you have promised this good thing to your servant. Therefore now may it please you to bless the house royal dynasty of your servant, so that it may continue forever before you. For you, O Lord God, have spoken it, and with your blessing may the house of your servant be blessed forever. It came about after this that David defeated the Philistines and humbled them, and he took control of Metheg, Amnon, the main city, from the hand of the Philistines. He defeated Moab and measured them with a length of rope, making them lie down on the ground. He measured 2 lengths to choose those to put to death, and 1 full length to choose those to be kept alive. And the surviving Moabites became the servants to David, bringing tribute. Then David defeated Hadadezer, the son of Rehob, the king of Zobah, and he went to restore his power at the river Euphrates. David captured from his 1,700 horsemen and 20,000 foot soldiers. David also hamstrung all the chariot horses, making them lame, but reserved enough of them for 100 chariots. When the Aramean Syrians of Damascus came to help Hadadezer, king of Zobah, David struck down 22,000 Arameans. Then David put garrisons among the Arameans in Damascus, and the Arameans became his servants and brought tribute. The Lord helped David wherever he went. David took the shields of gold that were carried by the servants of Hadadezer and brought them to Jerusalem. And from Betah and Berothai, cities of Hadadezer, King David took an immense quantity of bronze. When Toi, king of Hamath, heard about David's defeat of all the forces of Hadadezer, Toi sent Joram, his son, to King David, and to greet and congratulate him for his battle and defeat of Hadadezer, for Hadadezer had been at war with Toi. Joram brought with him articles of silver, gold, and bronze as gifts. King David also dedicated these gifts to the Lord, along with the silver and gold that he had dedicated from all the nations which he subdued, from Aram, Syria, Moab, the Ammonites, the Philistines, and Amalek, and from the spoil of Hadadezer, the son of Rehob, the king of Zobah. So David made a name for himself when he returned from killing 18,000 Aramean Syrians in the valley of Salt. He put garrisons in Edom. In all Edom he put garrisons, and all the Edomites became servants to David. And the Lord helped him wherever he went. So David reigned over all Israel and continued to administer justice and righteousness for all his people. Joab the son of Zeruiah was commander of the army. Jehoshaphat the son of Elihud was recorder secretary. Zadok the son of Ahitub and Ahimelech the son of Abithar were the chief priests. And Sariah was the scribe. Benaiah the son of Jehoiada was head over both the Cherethites and Pelethites, the king's bodyguards, and David's sons were chief confidential advisors, officials to the king. And David said, Is there still anyone left of the house family of Saul to whom I may show kindness for Jonathan's sake? There was a servant of the house of Saul whose name was Ziba, so they called him to David. And the king said to him, Are you Ziba? He said, I am your servant. And the king said, "Is there no longer anyone left of the house family of Saul to whom I may show the goodness and graciousness of God?" Ziba replied to the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan, one whose feet are crippled." So the king said to him, "Where is he?" And Ziba replied to the king, "He is in the house of Machir the son of Ammiel in Lodebar." Then King David sent word and had him brought from the house of Machir the son of Ammiel from Lodebar. Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David and fell face down and laid himself down in respect. David said, "Mephibosheth," and he answered, "Here is your servant." Then David said to him, "Do not be afraid, for I will certainly show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan, and will restore to you all the land of your grandfather Saul, and you shall always eat at my table." Again Mephibosheth lay himself face down and said, "What is your servant, that you would be concerned for a dead dog like me?" Then the king summoned Ziba, Saul's servant, and said to him, "I have given your master's grandson everything that belonged to Saul and to all his house family. You and your sons and your servants shall cultivate the land for him, and you shall bring in the produce so that your master's grandson may have food to eat. But Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, shall always eat at my table." Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, "Your servant will do according to everything that my lord the king commands." So Mephibosheth ate at David's table as one of the king's sons. Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah, and all who lived in Ziba's house were servants to Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem, for he always ate at the king's table, and he was lame in both feet. Now it happened later that Nahash the king of Ammonites died, and his son Hanun became king in his place. Then David said, "I will show kindness to Hanun the son of Nahash, just as his father did to me." So David sent a letter along with some of his servants to console him in regard to his father's death. And David's servants came into the land of the Ammonites. But the princes of the Ammonites were suspicious, and said to Hanun their lord, "Do you think that David is honoring your father because he has sent comforters to you? Has David not sent his servants to you in order to search the city, to spy it out, and overthrow it?" So Hanun took David's servants and shaved off their beards, and cut off their robes in the middle as far as their hips, and sent them away. When David was informed, he sent messengers to meet them before they reached Jerusalem, for the men were greatly ashamed and humiliated. And the king said, "Stay at Jericho until your beards grow, and then return." When the Ammonites saw that they had become an object of hatred to David, they sent word and hired the Arameans, Syrians of Beth-rehob, and the Arameans of Zobah 20,000 foot soldiers, and the king of Mecca with 1,000 men, and the men of Tob with 12,000 men to fight for them. When David heard about it, he sent Joab and the entire army, the strong and brave men. The Ammonites came out and lined up for battle at the entrance of the city gate, but the Arameans of Zobah and Rehob and the men of Tob and Mecca were stationed by themselves in the field. Now when Joab saw that the battlefront was against him in front and in the rear, he selected some of all the choice men in Israel and sent them in battle formation to meet the Arameans Syrians. But he placed the rest of the men in the hand of his brother Abishai, and he placed them in battle formation to meet the Ammonites. Joab said to Abishai, "If the Arameans are too strong for me, then you shall help me, but if the Ammonites are too strong for you, I will come to help you. Be courageous, and let us show ourselves courageous for the benefit of our people and the cities of our God, and may the Lord do what is good in his sight." So Joab and the people who were with him approached the battle against the Arameans, and they fled before him. When the Ammonites saw that the Arameans had fled, they also fled before Ishbi and entered the city. So Joab returned from battling against the Ammonites and came to Jerusalem. When the Arameans saw that they were defeated by Israel, they gathered together. Hadadezer sent word and brought out the Arameans who were beyond the river Euphrates, and they came to Helam, and Shobak, the commander of the army of Hadadezer, led them. When David was informed, he gathered all Israel together and crossed the Jordan and came to Helam. Then the Arameans assembled in battle formation to meet David and fought against him. But the Arameans fled before Israel, and David killed 700 Aramean charioteers and 40,000 horsemen, and struck Shobak, the commander of their army, and he died there. When all the kings serving Hadadezer saw that they had been defeated by Israel, they made peace with Israel and served them. So the Aramean Syrians were afraid to help the Ammonites anymore. Then it happened in the spring, at the time when the kings go out to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all the fighting men of Israel. And they destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. But David remained in Jerusalem. One evening David got up from his couch and was walking on the flat roof of the king's palace. And from there he saw a woman bathing, and she was very beautiful in appearance. David sent word and inquired about the woman. Someone said, "Is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" David sent messengers and took her. When she came to him, he lay with her, and when she was purified from her uncleanness, she returned to her house. The woman conceived, and she sent word and told David, "I am pregnant." Then David sent word to Joab, saying, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." So Joab sent Uriah to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him how Joab was, how the people were doing, and how the war was progressing. Then David said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet, spend time at home." Uriah left the king's palace, and a gift from the king was sent out after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance of the king's palace, and all the servants of his lord, and did not go down to his house. When they told David Uriah did not go down to his house, David said to Uriah, "Have you not just come from a long journey? Why did you not go into your house?" Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in huts, temporary shelters, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are camping in the open field. Should I go to my house to eat and drink and lie with my wife? By your life and the life of your soul, I will not do this thing." Then David said to Uriah, "Stay here today as well, and tomorrow I will let you leave." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. Now David called him to dinner, and he ate and drank with him, so that he made Uriah drunk. In the evening he went out to lie on his bed with the servants of his lord, and still did not go down to his house. In the morning David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. He wrote in the letter, "Put Uriah in the front line of the heaviest fighting, and leave him, so that he may be struck down and die." So it happened that as Joab was besieging the city, he assigned Uriah to the place where he knew the enemy's valiant men were positioned. And the men of the city came out and fought against Joab, and some of the people among the servants of David fell. Uriah the Hittite also died. Then Joab sent word and informed David of all the events of the war, and he commanded the messenger, "When you have finished reporting all the events of the war to the king, then if the king becomes angry and he says to you, 'Why did you go so near to the city to fight? Did you not know that they would shoot arrows from the wall? Who killed Abimelech the son of Jerubbesheth, Gideon? Was it not a woman who threw an upper millstone on him from the wall so that he died at Thebez? Why did you go so near the wall? Then you shall say, Your servant Uriah the Hittite is also dead.'" So the messenger left, and he came and told David everything that Joab had sent to report. The messenger said to David, "The men indeed prevailed against us and came out to us in the field, but we were on them and pushed them as far as the entrance of the city gate. Then the archers shot at your servants from the wall. Some of the king's servants are dead, and your servant Uriah the Hittite is also dead." Then David said to the messenger, "Tell Joab this, do not let this thing disturb you, for the sword devours one side as well as another. Strengthen your battle against the city and overthrow it, and so encourage Joab." When Uriah's wife Bathsheba heard that her husband Uriah was dead, she mourned for her husband. And when the time of mourning was past, David sent word and had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing that David had done with Bathsheba was evil in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord sent Nathan the prophet to David. He came and said to him, "There were 2 men in his city, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing but one little ewe lamb, which he had purchased and nourished. And it grew up together with him and his children. It ate his food, drank from his cup, it lay in his arms, and was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler visitor came to the rich man, and to avoid taking one from his own flock or herd, to prepare a meal for the traveler who had come to him, he took the poor man's ewe lamb and prepared it for his guest. Then David's anger burned intensely against the man, and he said to Nathan, "As the Lord lives, the man who has done this deserves to die. He shall make restitution for the ewe lamb for 4 times as much as the lamb was worth, because he did this thing and had no compassion." Then Nathan said to David, "You are that man. Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I anointed you as king over Israel, and I spared you from the hand of Saul. I also gave you your master's house and put your master's wives into your care and under your protection. And I gave you the house royal dynasty of Israel and of Judah. And if that had been too little, I would have given you much more. Why have you despised the word of the Lord by doing evil in his sight? You have struck down Uriah the Hittite with a sword and have taken his wife to be your wife. You have killed him with the sword of the Ammonites. Now therefore the sword shall never depart from your house, because you have despised me and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. Thus says the Lord, Behold, I will stir up evil against you from your own household, and I will take your wives before your eyes and give them to your companion. and he will lie with your wives in broad daylight. Indeed, you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel, and in broad daylight." David said to Nathan, "I have sinned against the Lord." And Nathan said to David, "The Lord has allowed your sin to pass without further punishment. You shall not die. Nevertheless, because by this deed you have been given a great opportunity to the enemies of the Lord to blaspheme him, the son that is born to you shall certainly die." Then Nathan went back to his home. And the Lord struck the child that Uriah's widow bore to David, and he was very sick. David therefore appealed to God for the child to be healed. And David fasted and went in and lay all night on the ground. The elders of his household stood by him in the night to lift him up from the ground, but he was unwilling to get up and would not eat food with them. Then it happened on the 7th day that the child died. David's servants were afraid to tell him that the child was dead, for they said, "While the child was still alive, we spoke to him, and he would not listen to our voices. How then can we tell him the child is dead, since he might harm himself or us?" But when David saw that his servants were whispering to one another, he realized that the child was dead. So David said to them, "Is the child dead?" And they said, "He is dead." Then David got up from the ground, washed, anointed himself with olive oil, changed his clothes, and went into the house of the Lord and worshipped. Then he came back to his own house, and when he asked, they set food before him, and he ate. Then his servant said to him, "What is this thing that you have done? While the child was alive, you fasted and wept, but when the child died, you got up and ate food." David said, "While the child was still alive, I fasted and wept, for I thought, who knows, the Lord may be gracious to me, and the child may live. But now he is dead, why should I continue to fast? Can I bring him back again? I will go to him when I die, but he will not return to me." David comforted his wife Bathsheba, and went to her and lay with her, and she gave birth to a son, and David named him Solomon. And the Lord loved the child, and he sent word through Nathan the prophet, and he named him Jedidiah, beloved of the Lord, for the sake of the Lord who loved the child. Now Joab fought against Rabbah of the Ammonites and captured the royal city. Joab sent messengers to David and said, "I have fought against Rabbah, I have even taken the city of waters. So now assemble the rest of the men and camp against the city and capture it, or I will take the city myself, and it will be named after me." So David gathered all the men together and went to Rabbah, and then fought against it and captured it. And he took the crown of their king from his head. It weighed a talent of gold, set in it was a precious stone, and it was placed on David's head. And he brought the spoil out of the city in great amounts. He also brought out the people who were there and put them to work with the saws and sharp iron instruments and iron axes, and made them work at the brickland. And he did this to all the Ammonite cities. Then David and all the men returned to Jerusalem. It happened afterwards that Absalom the son of David had a beautiful sister whose name was Tamar, and Amnon, her half-brother, the son of David, was in love with her. Amnon was so frustrated because of his half-sister Tamar that he made himself sick, for she was a virgin, and Amnon thought it impossible for him to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shema, David's brother, and Jonadab was a very shrewd, cunning man. He said to Amnon, "Why are you, the king's son, so depressed morning after morning? Will you not tell me?" And Amnon said to him, "I am in love with Tamar, my half-brother Absalom's sister." Jonadab said to him, "Go to bed and pretend you are sick. And when your father David comes to see you, say to him, 'Just let my sister Tamar come and serve me food, and let her prepare it in my sight, so that I may see it and eat from her hand.'" So Amnon lay down and pretended to be sick, and when the king came to see him, Amnon said to the king, "Please let my sister Tamar come and make me a couple of cakes in my sight, so that I may eat from her hand." Then David sent word to the house of Tamar, saying, "Go now to your brother Amnon's house and prepare some food for him." So Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house, and he was in bed. And she took dough and kneaded it, and made cakes in his sight, and baked them. She took the pan and dished them out before him, but he refused to eat. And Amnon said, "Have everyone leave me." So everyone left him except Tamar. Then Amnon said to Tamar, "Bring the food into the bedroom, so that I may eat it from your hand." So Tamar took the cakes she had made, and brought them into the bedroom to her half-brother Amnon. When she brought them to him to eat, he took hold of her and said, "Come, lie with me, my sister." She replied, "No, my brother, do not violate me, for such a thing is not done in Israel. Do not do this disgraceful thing. As for me, how could I get rid of my shame and disgrace? And you will be considered one of the fools in Israel. So now just speak to the king about taking me as your wife, for he will not withhold me from you." But he would not listen to her, and since he was stronger than she, he violated her and lay with her. Then Amnon became extremely hateful toward her, for his hatred toward her was greater than the love which he had for her. And Amnon said to her, "Get up and get out." But she said, "No, because this wrong of sending me away is worse than the other that you have done to me." But he would not listen to her. Instead, he called his young man, who was his personal servant, and said, "Now throw this woman out of my presence and bolt the door behind her." Now Tamar was wearing a long-sleeved robe of various colors, for that is how the virgin daughters of the king dressed themselves in robes. Then Amnon's personal servant took her out and bolted the door behind her. So Tamar put dust on her head in grief and tore the long-sleeved robe which she had on, and she put her hand on her head and went away crying out for help. So her brother Absalom said to her, "Has your brother Amnon been with you? But now keep silent, my sister. He is your brother. Do not take this matter to heart." So Tamar remained secluded in her brother Absalom's house. Now when King David heard about all these things, he was very angry, but failed to take any action. But Absalom did not speak to Amnon either good or bad, for Absalom hated Amnon because he had violated his sister Tamar. Now it came about after 2 full years that Absalom had sheep shears at Baal-hazor near Ephraim, and Absalom invited all the king's sons to a party. Absalom came to his father the king and said, "Behold, your servant has sheep shears. Please let the king and his servants go with your servant." But the king said to Absalom, "No, my son, we should not all go, for we will be a burden to you." Although Absalom strongly urged David, still he would not go, but he gave him his blessing. Then Absalom said, "If not, then at least let my brother Amnon go with us." And the king said to him, "Why should he go with you?" But Absalom urged him again, and he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. Now Absalom commanded his servants, "Notice carefully, when Amnon's heart is joyous with wine, and when I say to you, 'Strike Amnon,' then kill him. Do not be afraid. Have I not commanded you myself, and in doing so have I not taken full responsibility for his death? Be courageous and brave." So the servants of Absalom did to Amnon just as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons got up, and every man mounted his mule and fled. Now it happened, while they were on the way back home, that the exaggerated report came to David, "Absalom has killed all the king's sons, and not one of them is left." Then the king stood and tore his clothes and lay on the ground in mourning, and all his servants were standing by with their clothes torn. But Jonadab, the son of Sheba, David's brother, responded, "Do not let my lord assume that all the king's sons have been put to death, for only Amnon is dead. This act of revenge has been on Absalom's mind since the day Amnon violated his sister Tamar. So now do not let my lord the king take the report to heart that all the king's sons are dead, for Amnon alone is dead." Now Absalom fled, and the young man who kept watch looked up, and behold, many people were coming from the road behind him by the side of the mountain. And Jonadab said to the king, "Look, the king's sons are coming. It has turned out just as your servant said." And when he finished speaking, the king's sons came, and they raised their voices and wept. And the king and all the servants also wept very bitterly. But Absalom fled and went to his mother's father, Talmi, the son of Ammihud, king of Geshur, and David mourned for his son every day. So Absalom fled and went to Geshur, and was there for 3 years. And the heart of King David longed to go to Absalom, for he was comforted regarding Amnon, since he was dead. The son of Zeruiah, Absalom, to Tekoa, a wise woman brought from there, and told her, "Please pretend to be a mourner, and put on mourning clothes, and do not anoint yourself with oil, but act like a woman who has for many days been in mourning for the dead. Then go to the king and speak to him in this way." So Joab told her what to say. When the woman of Tekoa spoke to the king, she bowed with her face to the ground and laid herself down and said, "Help, O my king." The king asked her, "What is the matter?" She said, "Truly, I am a widow. My husband is dead. Your maidservant had 2 sons, but the 2 of them struggled and fought in the field. There was no one to separate them, so one struck the other and killed him. Now behold, the entire family has risen against your maidservant, and they say, 'Hand over the one who killed his brother, so that we may put him to death, to pay for the life of his brother whom he killed, and destroy the heir also.' By doing this, they will extinguish my coal that is left, leaving my husband without a name or a remnant heir on the face of the earth." Then David said to the woman, "Go to your home, and I will give orders concerning you." The woman of Tekoa said to the king, "O Lord my king, the guilt is on me and on my father's house, but the king and his throne are guiltless." The king said, "If anyone speaks to you about this matter, bring him to me for judgment, and he will not touch you again." Then she said, "Please let the king remember the Lord your God, so that the avenger of blood will not continue to destroy. Otherwise they will destroy my son." And David said, "As the Lord lives, not a single hair from the head of your son shall fall to the ground." Then the woman said, "Please let your maidservant speak one more word to my lord the king." He said, "Speak." The woman said, "Now why have you planned such a thing against God's people? For in speaking this word, the king is like a guilty man, in that the king does not bring back his banished one. For we will certainly die, and are like water that is spilled on the ground and cannot be gathered up again. Yet God does not simply take away life, but devises plans so that the one who is banished is not driven away from him. Now I came to speak of this matter to my lord the king, because the people have made me afraid. So your maidservant thought, I will just speak to the king. Perhaps the king will do what his maidservant requests. For the king will hear and save his maidservant from the hand of the man who would destroy me and my son together from the inheritance of God." Then your maidservant said, "Please let the word of my lord the king be comforting, for my lord the king is as the angel of God to discern good and evil. May the Lord your God be with you." And the king answered and said to the woman, "Do not hide from me anything that I ask you." And the woman said, "Let my lord the king please speak." The king said, "Is the hand of Joab with you in all of this?" And the woman answered, "As your soul lives, my lord the king, no one can turn to the right or to the left from anything that my lord the king has said. Indeed, it was your servant Joab who commanded me. He put all these words in the mouth of your maidservant, in order to change the appearance of things between Absalom and you, his father. Your servant Joab did this thing. But my lord has wisdom like the wisdom of the angel of God, to know everything that is in the earth." Then the king said to Joab, "Listen, I will most certainly do this thing. Now go, bring back the young man Absalom." Joab bowed his face toward the ground and lay himself down and blessed the king. Then Joab said, "Today your servant knows that I have found favor in your sight, my lord, O king, and that the king has done the request of his servant." So Joab got up, went to Geshur, and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. However, the king said, "Let him go to his own house, and do not let him see my face." So Absalom went into his own house and did not see the king's face. Now in all Israel there was no man as handsome as Absalom, so highly praised for that, from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head there was no blemish in him. When he cut the hair of his head, for at the end of each year he cut it, because its weight was heavy on him, he weighed the hair of his head at 200 shekels by the king's weight. To Absalom were born 3 sons and 1 daughter, whose name was Tamar. She was a beautiful woman. Absalom lived 2 full years in Jerusalem without seeing the king's face. So Absalom went sent for Joab to send him to the king, but he would not come to him. Even when he sent again a second time, he still would not come. Therefore Absalom said to his servants, "See, Joab's property is near mine, and he has barley there. Go and set it on fire." So Absalom's servant set the field on fire. Then Joab took action and went to Absalom at his house and said to him, "Why did your servant set my field on fire?" Absalom answered Joab, "I sent for you, saying, 'Come here, so that I may send you to the king to ask, why have I come back from Geshur? It would be better for me to still be there. Now then, let me see the king's face, and if there is guilt in me, let him put me to death.'" So Joab came to the king and told him. Then David called for Absalom, and he came to the king and bowed his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. After this, Absalom provided for himself a chariot and horses and 50 men as runners before him. He would get up early and stand beside the road to the gate of the city where the court was held. And when any man who had a dispute came to the king for judgment, Absalom will call to him, "From what city are you?" And he would say, "Your servant is from one of the tribes of Israel." Then Absalom would say to him, "See, your claims are good and right, but there is no man appointed as the king's agent to listen to you." Moreover, Absalom would say, "Oh, that I were appointed judge in the land. Then every man who had a dispute could come to me, and I would get justice for him." And whenever a man approached to bow down before him, he would put out his hand, take hold of him, and kiss him. This is how Absalom dealt with everyone in Israel who came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. And after 4 years, Absalom said to the king, "Please let me go and pay my vow which I have made to the Lord at Hebron, my birthplace. For your servant made a vow while I lived at Geshur in Aram, Syria. If the Lord will in fact bring me back to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord by offering a sacrifice of thanksgiving." And David the king said to him, "Go in peace." So he arose and went to Hebron. But Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, you shall say, 'Absalom is king in Hebron.'" Then 200 men from Jerusalem, who were invited as guests to his sacrificial feast, went with Absalom. They went innocently and knew nothing about his plan against David. And Absalom sent for Ahithophel the Gibeonite, David's counselor, from his city Gilo, while he was offering sacrifice. And the conspiracy grew strong, for the people with Absalom increased continually. Then a messenger came to David, saying, "The hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom." David said to all his servants who were with him at Jerusalem, "Arise, let us flee, or none of us will escape from Absalom. Go in haste, or he will overtake us quickly and bring disaster on us and strike the city with the edge of the sword." The king's servant said to him, "Listen, your servants are ready to do whatever my lord with the king decides." So the king left and all his household with him. But the king left behind 10 women who were concubines to take care of the house palace. The king left and all the people with him, and they stopped at the last house. All of David's servants passed on beside him, and all the Cherethites, Pelethites, and the Gittites, 600 men who had come with him from Gath, passed on before the king. Then the king said to Ittai the Gittite, "Why should you go with us too? Go back and stay with the king of your own country, for you are a foreigner and an exile as well. Return to your own place. You came only yesterday, so should I make you wander with us today while I go where I will? Return and take your brothers back with you also. May loving kindness and faithfulness be with you." But Ittai answered the king, "As the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, most certainly wherever my lord the king may be, whether for death or life, there will your servant be also." So David said to Ittai, "Go on and cross over the brook Kidron." Ittai the Gittite crossed over with all his men and all the little ones who were with him. While all the country was weeping with a loud voice, all the people crossed over. The king also crossed the brook Kidron, and all the people went on toward the way of the wilderness that lies between Jerusalem and the Jordan River. Now Zadok also came, and all the Levites with him, carrying the ark of the covenant of God. And they set down the ark of God, and Abiathar the priest came up and officiated until all the people had finished passing from the city. Then the king told Zadok, "Take the ark of God back to its rightful place in the city of Jerusalem, the capital. If I find favor in the Lord's sight, he will bring me back again and let me both see it and his dwelling place habitation. But if he should say, 'I have no delight in you,' then here I am. Let him do to me what seems good to him." The king also said to Zadok the priest, "Are you not a seer? Return to the city in peace, you and Abiathar, and your 2 sons with you, your son Ahimaaz and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. See, I am going to wait at the fords of the Jordan in the wilderness until word comes from you to inform me." So Zadok and Abiathar brought the ark of God back to Jerusalem, and they stayed there. And David went up the ascent of the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went, with his head covered and walking barefoot in despair. And all the people who were with him covered their heads and went up, weeping as they went. David was told, "Ahithophel, your counselor, is among the conspirators with Absalom." David said, "O Lord, I pray you, turn Ahithophel's counsel into foolishness." It happened when David came to the summit of the Mount of Olives, where he worshipped God, behold, Hushai the Archite came to meet him with his tunic torn and dust on his head, as if in mourning. David said to him, If you go on with me, you will be a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, 'I will be your servant,' O king, as I have been your father's servant in the past, so I will be your servant now, then you can thwart and make useless the advice of Ahithophel for me. Are not Zadok and Abiathar the priests with you there? So it shall be that every word you hear from the king's palace, you shall report it to them. Their 2 sons are there with them, Ahimaaz, Zadok's son, and Jonathan, Abiathar's son. And by them you shall send to me everything that you hear." So Hushai, David's friend, returned to the city, and at about that same time Absalom came into Jerusalem. When David was a little past the summit of the Mount of Olives, behold, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him with a team of saddled donkeys on them, and on them were 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 summer fruits, and a jug of wine. The king said to Ziba, "Why do you have these?" Ziba said, "The donkeys are for the king's household family to ride on. The bread and summer fruit are for the young men to eat, and the wine is for anyone to drink who becomes weary in the wilderness." Then the king said, "And where is your master's son, Mephibosheth?" Ziba said to the king, "Behold, he remains in Jerusalem, for he said, 'Today the house of Israel will give me back the kingdom of my father.'" Then the king said to Ziba, "Behold, everything that belonged to Mephibosheth is now yours." Ziba said, "I bow down in honor and gratitude. Let me find favor in your sight, O my lord the king." When King David came to Bahurim, a man named Shimei, the son of Gera, came out from there. He was of the family of Saul's household, and he was cursing continually as he came out. He threw stones at David and all the servants of King David, yet all the people and all the warriors remained on his right and on his left. This is what Shimei said as he cursed, Get out, you man of bloodshed, you worthless and useless man! The Lord has returned upon you all the bloodshed of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. And the Lord has given the kingdom into the hands of Absalom your son. And behold, you are caught in your own evil, for you are a man of bloodshed. Then Abishai, David's nephew, the son of Zeruiah, said to the king, Why should this dead dog, despicable person, curse my lord the king? Let me go over and take off his head. But the king said, What business is this of yours, O sons of Zeruiah? If Shimei is cursing because the Lord said to him, Curse David, then who should say, Why have you done so? Then David said to Abishai and to all his servants, Look, my son Absalom, who came from my own body, is seeking my life. How much more reason now does this Benjamite have to curse me? Let him alone and let him curse, for it could be that the Lord has told him to do it. Perhaps the Lord will look on the wrong done to me by Shimei if he is acting on his own, and in that case perhaps the Lord will this day return good to me in place of his cursing. So David and his men went on the road, and Shimei went along on the hillside close beside David and cursed as he went and threw stones and dust at him. The king and all the people who were with him arrived at the Jordan River weary, and he refreshed himself there. Then Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, entered Jerusalem, and Ahithophel with him. Now it happened when Hushai the Archite, David's friend, came to Absalom, Hushai said to him, Long live the king! Long live the king! Absalom said to Hushai, Is this your loyalty to your friend? Why did you not go with your friend? Hushai said to Absalom, No, for whoever the Lord and this people and all the men of Israel have chosen as king, I will be his, and I will remain with him. Besides, whom should I serve? Should I not serve in the presence of David's son, as I have served in your father's presence? So shall I serve in your presence. Then Absalom said to Ahithophel, Give me your advice. What should we do? Ahithophel said to Absalom, Go into your father's concubines, whom he has left behind, to take care of the house. Then all Israel will hear that you have made yourself odious to your father. Then the hands of all who are with you will be strengthened by your boldness and audacity. So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the roof of the king's palace, and Absalom went into his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. The advice of Ahithophel, which he gave in those days, was as if a man had consulted the word of God. This is how all Absalom's counsel was regarded by both David and Absalom. Then Ahithophel said to Absalom, Please let me choose 12,000 men, and I will set out and pursue David tonight. I will strike while he is weary and exhausted, and terrify him, and all the people with him will flee in terror. Then I will attack the king alone, and I will bring all the people who followed David back to you. The return of everyone depends on the death of the man you are seeking. Then all the people will be at peace and accept you as king. So the plan pleased Absalom and all the elders of Israel. Nevertheless, Absalom said, Now call Hushai the Archite also, and let us hear what he has to say. When Hushai came to Absalom, Absalom said to him, Ahithophel has advised this plan of action. Should we do what he says? If not, you speak and explain why not. So Hushai said to Absalom, Ahithophel has not given good advice this time. And Hushai said, You know your father and his men, that they are brave men, and they are enraged and fierce, like a bear deprived of her cubs in the field. Your father is a shrewd man of war, and will not spend the night with the people, knowing that you seek his life. Behold, he has hidden himself even now in one of the ravines or another place. And when some of your troops fall at the first attack, whoever hears about it will say, There has been a defeat among the people who follow Absalom. And even the one who is brave, whose heart is like the heart of a lion, will completely lose heart and melt away. For all Israel knows that your father is a mighty man, and that those who are with him are brave men. But I advise that all of the men of Israel may be summoned to you, from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south, like the sand that is by the sea in abundance, and that you personally go into battle. So shall we come upon David in one of the places where he can be found, and we will fall on him as the dew falls unseen and unheard on the ground. And of him and of all the men who are with him, not even one will be left. If he retreats into a city, then all Israel shall bring ropes to that city and will drag it into the ravine until not even a pebble of it is found there. Then Absalom and all the men of Israel said, The advice of Hushai the Archite is better than that of Ahithophel. For the Lord had ordained to thwart the good advice of Ahithophel, so that the Lord could bring disaster upon Absalom. Then Hushai said to Zadok and Abiathar the priest, This is the advice that Ahithophel gave to Absalom and the elders of Israel, and this is the advice that I have given. Now then, send word quickly and tell David, Do not spend the night at the fords on the west side of the Jordan in the wilderness, but by all means cross over to the east side of the river, or else the king and all the people with him will be destroyed if Ahithophel is allowed by Absalom to lead an attack. Now Jonathan and Ahimaaz, the priest's sons, were staying at Enrogel, and a maidservant appearing to go for water would go and tell them what was happening, and they would go secretly and inform King David, for they could not allow themselves to be seen coming into the city of Jerusalem. But a boy saw them and told Absalom, so the two of them left quickly and came to the house of a man in Bahurim, who had a well in his courtyard, and with his permission they went down into it. And the woman of the house took a covering and spread it over the mouth of the well and scattered grain on it, so nothing was discovered. Then Absalom's servants came to the woman of the house and asked, "Where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan?" And the woman said to them, "They have crossed over the brook." When they searched and could not find them, they returned to Jerusalem. After they left, Jonathan and Ahimaaz came up out of the well and went and informed King David, and said to David, "Arise and cross over the Jordan River quickly, for Ahithophel has advised an attack against you." Then David and all the people who were with him departed and crossed over the Jordan. By daybreak not even one was left who had not crossed the Jordan. Now when Ahithophel saw that his advice had not been followed, he saddled his donkey and set out and went to his home, to his city. Then he put his household in order and hanged himself. So he died and was buried in the tomb of his father. Then David came to Mahanaim, and Absalom crossed over the Jordan, he and all the men of Israel with him. Absalom put Amasa in command of the army instead of Joab. Now Amasa was the son of a man named Ether the Israelite, who had married Abigail, the daughter of Nahash, the half-sister of David, and the sister of Zeruiah, Joab's mother. So Israel and Absalom camped in the land of Gilead. When David came to Mahanaim, Shobi the son of Nahash from Rabbah of the Ammonites, and Machir the son of Amiel from Lodebar, and Barzillai the Gileadite from Rogelim, brought beds, basins, pottery, wheat, barley, flour, roasted grain, broad grains, lentils, and other roasted grain, honey, cream, sheep, cheese of the herd, for David and the people who were with him to eat. For they said, "The people are hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness." Then David numbered the men who were with him, and set over them commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds. Then David sent the army out, a third under the command of Joab, a third under Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and a third under the command of Ittai the Gittite. And the king said to the men, "I myself will certainly go out to fight with you." But the men said, "You should not go out to battle with us, for if in fact we retreat, they will not care about us. Even if half of us die, they will not care about us. But you are worth 10,000 of us, so now it is better that you be ready to help us from the city of Mahanaim." Then the king said to them, "I will do whatever seems best to you." So the king stood beside the gate of Mahanaim, and all the army went out in groups of hundreds and of thousands. The king commanded Joab and Abishai and Ittai, saying, "Deal gently with the young man Absalom for my sake." And all the men heard when the king gave orders to all the commanders about Absalom. So the men went out into the field against Israel, and the battle was fought in the forest of Ephraim. The men of Israel who supported Absalom were defeated there by the men of David, and a great slaughter took place there that day, 20,000 men. For the battle there was spread out over the surface of the entire countryside, and the hazards of the forest devoured more men that day than did the sword. Now Absalom met the servants of David. Absalom was riding on his mule, and the mule went under the thick branches of a massive tree, and his head was caught in the thick branches of the tree. And he was left hanging in mid-air between heaven and earth, while the mule that had been under him kept going. A certain man saw it and informed Joab, saying, "I saw Absalom hanging in a tree." Joab said to the man who informed him, "You saw him? Why then did you not strike him there to the ground? I would have given you 10 pieces of silver and a belt." The man told Joab, "Even if I were to feel the weight of 1,000 pieces of silver in my hands, I would not put out my hand against the king's son. For we all heard the king command you, Abishai and Ittai, saying, 'Protect the young man Absalom for my sake.' Otherwise, if I had acted treacherously against his life, for nothing is hidden from the king, you yourself would have taken sides against me." Joab said, "I will not waste time with you." So he took 3 spears in his hand and thrust them into the heart of Absalom while he was still alive and caught in the midst of the tree. And 10 young men, Joab's armor-bearers, surrounded and struck Absalom and killed him. Then Joab blew the trumpet to signal the end of the combat, and the men returned from pursuing Israel, for Joab held them back. They took down the body of Absalom and threw it into a deep pit in the forest and set up a huge mound of stones over him. Then all Israel fled, everyone to his own tent. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and set up for himself a memorial pillar which is in the king's valley, for he said, "I have no son to keep my name in remembrance." He named the memorial pillar after himself, and to this day it is called Absalom's monument. Then Ahimaaz the son of Zadok said, "Let me run and bring the king news that the Lord has vindicated him by rescuing him from the power of his enemies." But Joab told him, "You are not the man to carry news to King David today, but you shall carry news another day. On this day you shall carry no news, because the king's son is dead." Then Joab said to the Cushite Ethiopian, Go, tell the king what you have seen. And the Cushite bowed to Joab and ran. Then Ahimaaz the son of Zadok said again to Joab, But whatever happens, please let me also run after the Cushite. Joab said, Why should you run, my son, seeing you will have no messenger's reward for going, because you have only bad news? But whatever happens, let me run. So Joab said to him, Run. Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain of the Jordan River and outran the Cushite. Now David was sitting between the two gates, and the lookout went up to the roof of the gate by the wall. And when he raised his eyes and looked, he saw a man running alone. The lookout called down and told the king. The king said, If he is alone, he has good news to tell. And he came nearer and nearer. Then the lookout saw another man running, and he called to the gatekeeper and said, Look, another man running alone. The king said, He is also bringing good news. The lookout said, I think the man in front runs like Ahimaaz the son of Zadok. The king said, He is a good man and is coming with good news. And Ahimaaz called out and said to the king, All is well. And he bowed before the king with his face to the ground and said, Blessed be the Lord your God, who has handed over the men who lifted up their hands to fight against my lord the king. The king answered, Is the young man Absalom safe? Ahimaaz answered, When Joab sent the king's servant and your servant, I saw a great turmoil, but I do not know what it was about. The king told him, Step aside and stand here. And he stepped aside and stood still. Behold, the Cushite Ethiopian arrived and said, Let my lord the king receive good news, for the Lord has vindicated you today by rescuing you from the hand power of all those who stood against you. The king asked the Cushite, Is the young man Absalom my son safe? The Cushite replied, May the enemies of my lord the king and all those who rise against you to do evil be dead like that young man is. The king was deeply moved and went to the upper room over the gate and wept in sorrow. And this is what he said as he walked, O my son Absalom, my son Absalom. How I wish that I had died instead of you, O Absalom, my son, my son. It was told to Joab, Behold, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom. So the victory on that day was turned into mourning for all the people, for the people heard it, said on that day, The king grieves for his son. The people stole into the city, the Mahanaim, that day, as people who are humiliated and ashamed and steal away when they retreat in battle. But the king covered his face and cried out with a loud voice, O my son Absalom! O Absalom, my son, my son! Then Joab came into the house to the king and said, Today you have put all your servants to shame, who this day have saved your life and the lives of your sons and your daughters, and the lives of your wives and concubines. For you love those who hate you and hate those who love you. For you have shown today that commanders and servants are nothing to you. For today I know that if Absalom had lived and all the rest of us had died today, then you would be pleased. So now stand up, go out and speak kindly and encouragingly to your servants. For I swear by the Lord that if you do not go out, not a man will stay with you tonight. And this will be worse for you than all the evil that has come upon you from your youth until now. Then the king stood and sat at the gate of Mahanaim, and they told all the people, The king is sitting at the gate, and all the people came before the king. But Israel, Absalom's troops, had fled, every man to his tent. All the people were quarreling throughout the tribes of Israel, saying, The king rescued us from the hands of our enemies, and he saved us from the hands of the Philistines, but now he has fled out of the land from Absalom. And Absalom, who we anointed over us, has died in battle. So now why are you leaders doing nothing about bringing back the king? Then King David sent word to Zadok and to Abiathar the priest, saying, Say to the elders of Judah, Why are you the last to bring the king back to his house in Jerusalem, since the word of all Israel has come to the king, and to this house? You are my brothers, relatives, relations. You are my bone and my flesh. Why then are you the last to bring back the king? Say to Amasa, the commander of Absalom's troops, Are you not my bone and my flesh? May God do so to me, and more also, if you will not be commander of my army from now on in place of Joab. In this way he changed the hearts of all the men of Judah as one man. So they sent word to the king, Return you and all your servants. So David returned and came to the Jordan, and supporters from Judah came to Gilgal to meet the king, to escort him across the Jordan. Then Shimei the son of Gera, a Benjamite of Bahurim, hurried and came down with the men from the tribe of Judah to meet King David, and 1,000 men from the tribe of Benjamin with him. And Ziba the servant of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons and 20 servants with him, rushed down to the Jordan before the king. Then they repeatedly crossed the ford to bring over the king's household family and to do what pleased him. And Shimei the son of Gera fell down before the king as he was about to cross the Jordan, and said to the king, Let not my lord consider me guilty, nor remember what your servant did wrong on that day, my lord. The king left Jerusalem, so that the king would take it to heart. For your servant knows that I have sinned. Therefore, behold, I have come today, the first of all the house of Joseph, to come down to meet my lord the king. But Ashimai the son of Zeruiah said, Should not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed? David said, What business is this of yours, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should be an adversary to me today? Should anyone be put to death in Israel today? For do I not know that today I am king over Israel? Therefore the king said to Shimei, You shall not be put to death. And so the king gave him his promise. Then Mephibosheth, the grandson of Saul, came down to meet the king, but he had not cared for his feet, nor trimmed his mustache, nor washed his clothes from the day the king left until the day he returned in peace and safety. And when he came to Jerusalem to meet the king said to him, Why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth? He said, My lord the king, my servant Ziba betrayed me, for I said, Saddle a donkey for me, so that I may ride on it and go with the king. For your servant is lame, but he took the donkeys and left without me. Further, he was slander to your servant to my lord the king, but my lord the king is like the angel of God, so do what is good in your eyes. For were not all of my father's household family nothing but dead men before the lord the king? Yet you set your servant among those who ate at your own table. What right do I still have to cry out any more to the king for help? The king said to him, Why speak any more of your affairs? I have said, You and Ziba shall divide the land. Mephibosheth said to the king, Let him even take it all, since my lord the king has returned to his own house in safety and peace. Now Barzillai the Gileadite came down from Rogelim and went on to the Jordan with the king to escort him over the Jordan. Barzillai was a very old man, 80 years old, and he had provided the king with food while he stayed at Mahanaim, for he was a very great and wealthy man. The king said to Barzillai, Cross over with me, and I will provide for you in Jerusalem with me. But Barzillai said to the king, How much longer have I to live, that I should go up with the king to Jerusalem? I am this day 80 years old. Can I be useful to advise you to discern between good and bad? Can your servant taste what I eat or drink? Can I still hear the voices of singing men and women? Why then should your servant be an added burden to my lord the king? Your servant would merely cross over the Jordan with the king. Why should the king compensate me with this reward? Please let your servant return, so that I may die in my own city and be buried by the grave of my father and mother. But here is your servant Chimham, my son. Let him cross over with my lord the king, and do for him what seems good to you. The king answered, Chimham shall cross over with me, and I will do for him what seems good to you, and whatever you ask of me I will do for you. So all the people crossed over the Jordan. When the king had crossed over, he kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his place. Then the king went on to Gilgal, and Chimham went on with him, and all the people of Judah, and also half the people of Israel accompanying the king. And all the men of Israel came to the king and said to him, Why have our brothers' relatives, the men from the tribe of Judah, stolen you away and brought the king and his household and all David's men with him over the Jordan, instead of waiting for us to arrive? Then all the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, Because the king is a close relative to us. So why then are you angry about this matter? Have we eaten at all at the king's expense? Or has anything been taken for us? Then the men of Israel answered the men of Judah, We have 10 tribes' shares in the king, and we have more claim on David than you. Why then did you treat us with contempt and ignore us by rushing ahead? Were we not the first to speak of bringing back our king? But the words of the men of Judah were harsher than those of the men of Israel. There happened to be a worthless and wicked man named Sheba the son of Bichri, a Benjamite. He blew a trumpet to call Israel to revolt and said, We have no portion in David and no inheritance in the son of Jesse. Every man to his tents, O Israel. So all the men of Israel deserted David and followed Sheba the son of Bichri, but the men of Judah stayed faithfully with their king from the Jordan to Jerusalem. Then David came to his house palace at Jerusalem, and the king took the 10 women, his concubines, whom he had left to take care of the house, and placed them under guard and provided for them, but did not go into them. So they were confined and lived as widows until the day of their death. Now the king said to Amasa, the commander of his army, Summon the fighting men of Judah to me within 3 days, and be present here yourself. So Amasa went to summon the fighting men of Judah, but he delayed longer than the time which David had set for him. And David said to Abishai his nephew, Now Sheba the son of Bichri will do us more harm than Absalom did. Take your Lord's servants and pursue him, so that he does not find fortified cities for himself and escape from our sight. So Joab's men went after him, along with David's bodyguards, the Cherethites and the Pelethites and all the warriors. They went out from Jerusalem to pursue Sheba the son of Bichri. When they were at the great stone in Gibeon, Amasa came to meet them. Now Joab was wearing his military uniform, and over it he had a belt with a sheath-red sword strapped around his hips. And as he went forward, it fell out. Joab said to Amasa, Is it going well with you, my brother? And with his right hand Joab took hold of Amasa by the beard, as if to kiss him in greeting. But Amasa, who had replaced Joab as David's commander, was off guard and not attentive to the sword in Joab's hand. So Joab struck Amasa in the abdomen with the sword, spilling his intestines to the ground. Without another blow, Amasa died. Then Joab and Abishai, his brother, pursued Sheba the son of Bichri. Now one of Joab's young men stood by him and said, Whoever favors Joab and is for David, let him follow Joab. But Amasa was wallowing in his blood in the middle of the highway, and when the man saw that all the people who came by stopped to look, he moved Amasa from the highway into the field and threw a garment over him. When he saw that everyone who came by Amasa stopped. When the body of Amasa was removed from the highway, everyone followed after Joab to pursue Sheba the son of Bichri. Now Joab went through all the tribes of Israel to Abel, even Beth-Maachah, and all the Berites, and they assembled and also went after Sheba. And the army of Joab came and besieged Sheba and Abel-Beth-Maachah, and they built up an assault ramp against the city. And it stood against the outer rampart, and all the people who were with Joab were wreaking destruction to make the wall fall. Then a wise woman cried out from the city, Hear, hear! Tell Joab, come here so that I may speak to you. So when he approached her, the woman asked, Are you Joab? He answered, I am. Then she said to him, Listen to the words of your maidservant. He answered, I am listening. Then she said, In the past, people used to say, They will certainly ask advice at Abel. And so they settled the dispute. I am one of the peaceful and faithful in Israel. You are seeking to destroy a city and a mother in Israel. Why would you swallow up, devour the inheritance of the Lord? Joab answered, far be it from me that I would swallow up or destroy. That is not true. But a man of the hill country of Ephraim, Sheba the son of Bichri by name, has lifted up his hand in rebellion against King David. Only hand him over, and I will leave the city. And the woman said to Joab, Behold, his head shall be thrown to you over the wall. Then the woman in her wisdom went to all the people to inform them of the agreement. And they beheaded Sheba the son of Bichri and threw his head down to Joab. So he blew the trumpet, signaling the end of the attack, and they dispersed from the city, every man to his own tent. And Joab returned to Jerusalem to David the king. Now Joab was commander over the entire army of Israel. Benaiah the son of Jehoiada was commander over the Cherethites and the Pelethites, the king's bodyguards. Aram was over the forced labor. Jehoshaphat the son of Eliud was recorder. Sheba was the scribe, and Zadok and Abiathar were priests. Also Ira the Jairite was a priest to David. There was famine in the days of David for 3 consecutive years, and David sought the presence face of the Lord, asking the reason. The Lord replied, It is because of Saul and his bloody house, because he put the Gibeonites to death. So the king called the Gibeonites and spoke to them. Now the Gibeonites were not of the sons descendants of Israel, but of the remnant survivors of the Amorites. The Israelites had sworn an oath to spare them, but Saul in his zeal for the sons of Israel and Judah had sought to strike down the Gibeonites. So David said to the Gibeonites, What should I do for you? How can I make it good so that you will bless the Lord's inheritance, Israel? The Gibeonites said to him, We will not accept silver or gold belonging to Saul or his household descendants, nor is it for us to put any man to death in Israel. David said, I will do for you whatever you say. So they said to the king, The man who consumed us and planned to exterminate us from remaining in any territory of Israel, let 7 men chosen from his sons' descendants be given to us, and we will hang them before the Lord. That is, put them on display impaled with broken legs and arms in Gibeah of Saul, the chosen one of the Lord. And the king said, I will give them. But the king spared Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, because of the Lord's oath that was between David and Saul's son Jonathan. So the king took the sons of Risa, the daughter of Aiah, whom she bore to Saul, Armory, and Mephibosheth, and the 5 sons of Merab, the daughter of Saul, whom she had borne to Adriel, the son of Barzillai the Mehilthite. He handed them over to the Gibeonites, and they hanged them on the hill before the Lord, and the 7 died together. They were put to death in the first days of the grain harvest, the beginning of the barley harvest in the spring. Rizpah, the daughter of Aias, took sackcloth and spread it out for herself on the rock, from the beginning of harvest in the spring until the autumn rain fell on them. And she allowed neither the birds of the sky to rest on their bodies by day, nor the beasts of the field to feed on them by night. David was told that Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, the concubine of Saul, had done. Then David went and took the bones of Saul and Jonathan his son from the men of Jabesh-Gilead, who had stolen them from the open square of Bethshan, where the Philistines had hanged them on the day when the Philistines had killed Saul in Gilboa. He brought up the bones of Saul and of Jonathan and his son from there, and they gathered the bones of those who had been hanged, with their arms and legs broken. They buried the bones of Saul and Jonathan his son in the country of Benjamin and Zelah, in the tomb of Kish his father, and they did all that the king commanded. After that, God was moved by prayer for the land. Now the Philistines were at war again with Israel. David went down with his servants. As they fought against the Philistines, David became weary. The Ish-bosheth, who was among the descendants of the giant, the weight of whose spear was 300 shekels, 6 pounds of bronze, was armed with a new sword, and he intended to kill David. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, came to David's aid and struck and killed the Philistine. Then David's men swore to him, "You shall not go out again with us to battle, so that you do not extinguish the lamp of Israel." After this there was war again with the Philistines at Gob-gezer. At that time Sibbecai the Hushite killed Saph-sippai, who was among the descendants of the giant. There was war with the Philistines again at Gob, and Elhanan, the son of Jeroboam, a Bethlehemite, killed Goliath the Gittite, whose spear shaft was like a weaver's beam. There was war at Gath again, where there was a man of great stature, who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in number. He also was a descendant of the giants. And when he taunted and defied Israel, Jonathan the son of Shimei, David's brother, killed him. These 4 warriors were descended from the giant in Gath, and they fell by the hands of David and his servants. David spoke the words of this song to the Lord when the Lord rescued him from the hands of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. He said, "The Lord is my rock and my fortress on the mountain and my rescuer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold and my refuge, my Savior, you save me from violence. I call on the Lord who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. For the waves of death encompassed me, the torrents of destruction overwhelmed and terrified me, the cords of Sheol surrounded me, the snares of death confronted me. In my distress I called upon the Lord, I cried out to my God, and from his temple in the heavens he heard my voice. My cry for help came into his ears. Then the earth shook and quaked, the foundations of the heavens trembled and were shaken, because he was angry. Smoke went up out of his nostrils, and devouring fire from his mouth, coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens also, and came down with thick darkness under his feet. He rode on a cherub and flew. He appeared upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness canopies around him, a mass of waters, thick clouds of the skies. Out of the brightness before him, coals of fire were set aflame. The Lord thundered from heaven, and the Most High uttered his voice. He sent out arrows and scattered them, lightning and confused them. The channels of the sea appeared, the foundations of the world were uncovered, at the rebuke of the Lord, at the blast of the breath of his nostrils. He sent from above, he took me, he drew me out of great waters. He rescued me from my strong enemy, from those who hated me, for they were too mighty for me. They came upon me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my support. He also brought me out of an open place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. The Lord has dealt with me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanliness of my hands he has rewarded me. For I have kept the ways of the Lord, and have not acted wickedly against my God. For all his judgments, legal decisions were before me, and from his statutes I did not turn aside. I was also blameless before him, and kept myself from wrongdoing. Therefore the Lord has rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to my cleanliness in his sight. With the loving and loyal you show yourself loving and loyal. With the blameless you show yourself blameless. With the pure you show yourself pure. With the perverted you show yourself astute. And you save the afflicted people, but your eyes are on the haughty whom you abase, humiliate. For you, O Lord, are my lamp. The Lord illuminates and dispels my darkness. For by you I can run upon a troop. By my God I can leap over a wall. As for God, his way is blameless and perfect. The word of the Lord is tested. He is a shield to all those who take refuge and trust in him. For who is God besides the Lord? And who is a rock besides our God? God is my strong fortress. He sets the blameless in his way. He makes my feet like the doe's feet, firm and swift. He sets me secure and confident on my high places. He trains my hands for war so that my arms can pull back a bow of bronze. You have also given me the shield of your salvation, and your help and gentleness make me great. You enlarge my steps under me, and my feet have not slipped. I pursued my enemies and destroyed them, and I did not turn back until they were consumed, eliminated. I consumed them and shattered them so that they did not rise. They fell under my feet. For you have surrounded me with strength for the battle. You have subdued under me those who stood against me. You have also made my enemies turn their backs to me and retreat, and I destroyed those who hated me. They looked, but there was no Savior for them. Even to the Lord they looked, but he did not answer them. Then I beat them as small as the dust of the earth. I crushed and stamped them as the mire, dirt, and mud of the streets. You also have rescued me from the strife within my own people. You have kept me as the head of the nations. People whom I have not known served me. Foreigners pretend obedience to me. As soon as they hear me, they obey me. Foreigners lose heart. They come trembling out of their strongholds. The Lord lives, and blessed be my rock, and exalted be my God, the rock of my salvation. It is God who executes vengeance for me, and brings down and disciplines the people under me, who also brings me out from my enemies. You even lift me above those who rise up against me. You rescue me from the violent man. For this I will give thanks and praise you, O Lord, among the nations. I will sing praises to your name. He is a tower of salvation and great deliverance to his king, and shows loving kindness to his anointed, to David and his offspring forever. Now these are the last words of David. David the son of Jesse declares, the man who is raised on high declares, the anointed of the God of Jacob and the sweetest psalmist of Israel. The Spirit of the Lord spoke by me, and his word was on my tongue. The God of Israel, the rock of Israel, spoke to me. He who rules over men righteously, who rules in the fear of God, is like the morning light when the sun rises, a morning without clouds, when the fresh grass springs out of the earth through sunshine after rain. Truly is not my house so blessed with God? For he has made an everlasting covenant with me, ordered in all things and secured. For will he not cause to grow and prosper all my salvation and my every wish? Will he not make it grow and prosper? But the wicked and worthless are all to be thrown away like thorns, because they cannot be taken with the hand. But the man who touches them must be armed with iron and the shaft of a spear, and they are utterly burned and consumed by fire in their place. These are the names of the mighty men warriors whom David had: Joab, Bathsheba, a Tekoanite, chief of the captains, also called Adino Eznite spear, because of the 800 men killed by him at one time. Next to him was Eleazar, the son of Dodo, the son of Ahoy. He was one of the three mighty men with David when they taunted and defied the Philistines assembled there for battle, and the men of Israel had gone. Eleazar stood up and struck down the Philistines until his hand was weary and clung to the sword. The Lord brought about a great victory that day. The people returned after him only to take the spoil of the slain. Next to Eleazar was Shema, the son of Agi the Herite. The Philistines were gathered into an army where there was a plot of ground full of lentils, and the people of Israel fled from the Philistines. But he took his stand in the center of the plot and defended it and struck down the Philistines, and the Lord brought about a great victory. Then 3 of the 30 chief men went down and came to David at harvest time in the cave of Adullam, while an army of Philistines was encamped in the valley of Rephaim. David was then in the stronghold, and the garrison of the Philistines was then in Bethlehem. And David had a craving and said, "Oh, that someone would give me water to drink from the well of Bethlehem, which is by the gate." So the 3 mighty men broke through the camp of the Philistines and drew water from the well of Bethlehem by the gate, and carried it and brought it to David. But he would not drink it, but poured it out and worshipped to the Lord. And he said, "Far be it from me, O Lord, that I should drink this. Is it not the same as the blood of the men who went at the risk of their lives?" So he would not drink it. These things the 3 mighty men did. Now Abishai, the brother of Joab, the son of Zeruiah, was chief of the 30. He wielded his spear against 300 men and killed them, and gained a reputation beside the 3. He was the most honored of the 30, so he became their commander. However, he did not attain to the greatness of the 3. Then Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, the son of a valiant man of Kabzeel, who had done many notable acts, killed 2 famous warriors of Moab. He also went down and killed a lion in the middle of a pit on a snowy day, and he killed an Egyptian and an impressive and handsome man. The Egyptian had a spear in his hand, but Benaiah went down to him with a club, snatched the spear out of the Egyptian's hand, and killed the man with his own spear. These things Benaiah the son of Jehoiada did, and gained a reputation beside the 3 mighty men. He was honored among the 30, but he did not attain to the greatness of the 3. David appointed him over his guard. Asahel, the brother of Joab, was one of the 30. Then Elhanan, the son of Dodo in Bethlehem, Shema of Herod, Elika of Herod, Heliz the Paltite, Ira the son of Ikish of Tekoa, Abizar of Anathoth, Mabuni the Hushanite, Zaman the Ahuhite, Mahira of Nepatah, Elab the son of Benah of Netopah, Ittai the son of Ribai and Gibeah of the Benjamites, Benaiah of Pirathon, Hiddai of the brooks of Gaish, Abibalm the Arborthite, Asmeth the Barmhumite, Eleba of the Shalbon, the sons of Jashan, Jonathan, Shema the Haratite, Ahim the son of Sherar, Ararite, Elipatet the son of Ashbi, the son of Makkah, Eliam the son of Athapanael of Ilo, Hezrai of Carmel, Peri the Arbite, Eagle the son of Nathan of Zobah, Bani the Gadite, Zelek the Ammonite, Nahari of Beeroth, armor-bearer of Joab the son of Zeruiah, Ira the Ithrite, Gareb the Ithrite, Uriah the Hittite, 37 in all. Now again the anger of the Lord burned against Israel, and he incited David against them to say, Go, count the people of Israel and Judah. So the king said to Joab the commander of the army who was with him, Go now through all the tribes of Israel from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south, and conduct a census of the people, so that I may know the number of the people. But Joab said to the king, May the Lord your God add to the people 100 times as many as there are, and let the eyes of my lord the king see it. But why does my lord the king want to do this thing? Nevertheless, the king's word prevailed against Joab and the commanders of the army. So they went from the king's presence to take a census of the people of Israel. They crossed over the Jordan and camped in Aorah on the south side of the city, which is in the middle of the river valley of the Arnon toward Gad, and on toward Jazer. Then they came to Gilead and to the land of Tatim Hodshi, and they came to Dan Jain, and around to Sidon. And they came to the stronghold of Tyre, and to all the cities of the Hivites and Canaanites, and they went out to the south of Judah, to Beersheba. So when they had gone through all the land taking the census, they came to Jerusalem at the end of 9 months and 20 days. And Joab gave the sum of the census of the people to the king. In Israel there were 800,000 valiant men who drew the sword, and the men of Judah were 500,000. But David's heart conscience troubled him after he had counted the people. David said to the Lord, I have sinned greatly in what I have done. But now, O Lord, please take away the sin of your servant, for I have acted very foolishly. When David got up in the morning, the word of the Lord came to the prophet Gad, David's seer, saying, Go and say to David, Thus says the Lord, I am giving you 3 choices. Select one of them for yourself, and I will do it to you. So Gad came to David and told him, and said to him, Shall 7 years of famine come to you in your land? Or will you flee 3 months before your enemies as they pursue you? Or shall there be 3 days of pestilence plague in your land? Now consider this and decide what answer I shall return to him who sent me. Then David said to Gad, I am in great distress. Let us fall into the hands of the Lord, for his mercies are great. But do not let me fall into the hands of man. So the Lord sent a pestilence plague lasting 3 days upon Israel, from the morning until the appointed time. And 70,000 men of the people from Dan to Beersheba died. When the avenging angel stretched out his hand toward Jerusalem to destroy it, the Lord relented from the disaster and said to the angel who destroyed the people, It is enough. Now relax your hand. And the angel of the Lord was by the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. When David saw the angel who was striking down the people, he spoke to the Lord and said, Behold, I alone am the one who has sinned and done wrong. But these sheep people of Israel, what have they done to deserve this? Please let your hand be only against me and my father's house family. Then Gad the prophet came to David that day and said to him, Go up, set up an altar to the Lord on the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite, where you saw the angel. So David went up according to Gad's word as the Lord commanded. Araunah looked down and saw the king and his servants crossing over toward him, and he went out and bowed before the king with his face toward the ground. Araunah said, Why has my lord the king come to his servant? And David said, To buy the threshing floor from you to build an altar to the Lord, so that the plague may be held back from the people. Araunah said to David, Let my lord the king take and offer up whatever seems good to him. Look, here are oxen for the burnt offering, and threshing sledges, and the yokes of the oxen for the wood. All of this, O king, Araunah gives to the king. And Araunah said to the king, "May the Lord your God be favorable to you." But the king said to Araunah, "No, but I will certainly buy it from you for a price. I will not offer burnt offerings to the Lord my God, which cost me nothing." So David purchased the threshing floor and the oxen for 50 shekels of silver. David built an altar to the Lord there and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. So the Lord was moved to compassion by David's prayer for the land, and the plague was held back from Israel.